This is GARIS masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 218, entitled Converting MGTOWs to Masculism. Description. This flyer explains to MGTOWs that there's a way for them to be active in gender politics without wasting their time and energy. The key idea is to convert women into female masculists by threatening them, MGTOW style, with babylessness. For women to have babies, the gender laws will have to be menfaired, and that requires women's help to weaken the female bloc vote by strengthening the male bloc vote by adding to it the female masculist vote. Fire itself. Converting MGTOWs to Masculism. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. There are a lot of MGTOWs in the world who privately would love to be more politically active and would love to see the profoundly misandrous gender laws menfaired, but take a fatalistic, passive, apolitical stance towards gender politics because they are convinced by MGTOW thinkers that gender political action on the part of MGTOWs would be a total waste of time and energy, so that the only option left for MGTOWs is to GTOW, go their own way, the core idea of the movement, and hence is placed explicitly in the very title of the movement. This flyer aims to persuade such MGTOW apoliticals, that is, MGTOWs who are ideologically opposed to political action, that there are ideas, techniques, strategies that make political action, gender politics, worthwhile, and very definitely not a waste of time and energy. In fact, just the opposite, namely allowing men's livers to achieve what they want, that is, freedom from manslavery, the menfairing of the gender laws, etc. This flyer spells out step by step these ideas, these strategies that have the ideational power to convert MGTOWs to masculism, that is, the angry political branch of the men's lib movement. I begin by presenting the core argument that apolitical MGTOWs use to justify, in brackets, rationalize, their apolitical stance, their apolitical passivity, and that is the female bloc vote argument. It goes as follows. No matter what the masculists try to do politically in the gender political arena, it will be a waste of time and energy because women are 51% of the voters and that a higher proportion of women vote than men. So when it comes to a zero-sum game clash between men and women, for example, in menfairing the divorce laws that so oppress men, that benefit women mightily, then the gender politicians will always side with the women, because women have the power to vote out the gender politicians if they take the men's side. There's a major weakness in the above female bloc vote argument, and that is that it can be refuted if women can be converted to become female masculists, who take the side of the masculists and join them in voting against the fluffy feminist hypocrites, against the fluffy women who want to keep their privileges gained from the fluffy feminist takeover of the divorce courts, which are so biased in favour of fluffies' interests. So how to convert women to become female masculists? By using MGTOW and masculist strategies that act as both the carrot and the stick. Masculists see the MGTOW walk away from marriage, paternity, and often from women in general as a very effective masculist political tool to frighten women to do what the masculists want in terms of male gender politics. The masculists tell women, especially young women, that due to the toxicity of the fluffy feminist hypocrite takeover of the divorce courts, that divorce and hence marriage have become so toxic for men that 2/3 of young men under 35 in many Western countries now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. That is, they are punishing women by ignoring them. Some women may be pumped and dumped, but that is all. They will not be given babies. Young women are now in panic as they find in practice again and again that men refuse to give them their sperm, especially quality men, the smarter men, who are better informed of MGTOW and masculist ideas as they spread and spread across the planet. Women are evolved to do two basic biological things. One is to find some manslave to pay for her to have babies, a deeply held attitude in women, and the other is to grow and raise the next generation. But MGTOW and masculism is blocking women from fulfilling these two goals, because women cannot have babies without getting quality sperm from quality males who, thanks to the fluffy feminist takeover of the divorce courts, refuse marriage, refuse paternity, and go their own way. The masculists then tell women that this is what is happening, and that it's very much in the self-interest of young women to join forces with the masculists, to put political pressure on the gender politicians to menfaired the gender laws. Otherwise, the gender politicians will continue the pro-feminist status quo, so that men will continue to reject paternity, forcing women to remain babyless, which is something that drives women crazy. That is, when they can't fulfill their fundamental destiny as a female, when they cannot achieve what their whole DNA drives them to do. So, women have a choice. They can remain loyal to their own sex and support politically the hypocrisy of the fluffy feminists who want equal rights with men, but are not prepared to accept equal obligations with men. That is, in sharing the burden of earning the living with men, especially in bothering to get a career-competent education that will allow them to be FIPs, that's F-I-P, as financially independent persons, as adults. Or they can switch sides and support the masculists in putting voting pressure on the gender politicians to menfaired the gender laws, for example, especially in the divorce courts, so that, for example, alimony is thrown out. Custody of children is automatically made joint. The original owner of the house gets to keep it. The paternity rejection right is legislated. Misandrous gender laws across the board are menfaired. Schools and media have to stop dumping on men. Laws are passed to create as many male as female teachers in primary and secondary schools, so that boys are given male role models. Positive discrimination may be necessary to give men higher salaries in primary schools than women, to encourage more men to be teachers, etc. Masculists teach women that their reward in combining with the male bloc vote against the pro-feminist gender politicians is that men will be a lot more inclined to have kids if the gender laws are made men-fair than if the current horrors in the fluffy feminist divorce courts remain in force. There's also another carrot for women, and that is a let-up of the powerful moral pressure placed on fluffy young women at high school and college who choose to become fluffies in their 30s by choosing to study the soft option at age 16 in high school. That is the intellectually easy, intellectually lazy choice of studying the memory-based, non-analytical majors such as languages, history, English literature, etc., and not the analytical subjects like math and the sciences, where they have to use their brains and think logically and abstractly. Masculist groups need to be set up in every university and college to educate men and women into masculist and MGTOW ideas. In order to be able to persuade women to become female masculists, there need to be enough masculists at high schools and colleges to be able to persuade them, and to apply strong moral pressure against the fluffies to FIP up by studying career-competent majors at high school. One of the main tasks of the masculists at universities is to help set up masculist/MGTOW groups at high schools, because the real fluffy crapper damage, that is of 16-year-old women choosing to study fluffy crap, occurs in the high schools, So university masculists/MGTOWs need to give talks at neighbouring high schools to help set up these groups, which can then apply strong moral pressure on young women to fip up, frightening these women that if they don't fip up and bother to obtain a career-competent education, then they will be punished severely by men by not finding a husband, and especially by not getting quality men's sperm. High school boys and male students at university need to be made conscious of a very basic fact that has enormous consequences in their fight against the feminazi bitches, the fluffy feminist hypocrites, and that is, quote, men have the financial power to force women to fip up. Nearly all men are fips because they're socialized that way by parents and teachers, and males evolve to be fips. A fluffy, a traditional woman who expects to be able to parasite off the money of a man, can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some gullible, ignorant man-slave. But the MGTOW/masculist movements are causing the supply of such man-slaves to dry up. Today, about 70% of young men now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. The feminazis have made marriage so toxic for men that marriage is now almost dead, and women are increasingly being forced by men to be babyless. Those women at high school who choose the soft option, the career incompetent option, need to be strongly harangued by their male classmates for being fluffy crappers, for being future fluffy parasites, who will want to parasite off some manslave, but there won't be any for them. By the time they're in their 30s with their biological clock ticking, there won't be any manslavable men left to be sexploited by fluffies. Men's libbers need to learn to strongly harangue the fluffy feminist hypocrites and put powerful moral pressure on them to get them to shut up with their PC is cyanate fairy bullshit that women are the superior sex. Young men need to be educated that the reverse is true, as shown by science. For example, men are smarter than women by 4 IQ points. Men have a 10% higher IQ variance than women, so the morons and the genii are men. So men have won 99% of the science Nobel Prizes. That men have much higher testosterone levels, so are more aggressive, more ambitious, more dogged and persistent, so accomplish far more than women, so dominate the Who's Who book entries. There are hugely more great men than great women. High school masculists/MGTOWs need to apply enormous moral pressure on young women to fip up or be spat at, seen as being immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, to be wiped out, ignored by men and punished so that their fluffy genes are removed from the gene pool, by such women being forced to rot on the shelf to extinction. Female masculists, however, will not suffer this treatment by men. They will not be subject to heavy moral pressure from men. They will be seen as allies with men's libbers and be supported. They will not be harangued and morally suffocated by masculist rhetoric. They still won't have babies with men's libbers, but at least men will talk with them, interact with them. Men won't be willing to have babies again until the divorce courts have been menfaired, and that won't happen until many women force the gender politicians to change their direction away from being pro-feminazi towards being menfaired. So women need to work hard with the men's libbers to get the gender laws menfaired so that women can go back to having babies again. Now assume that the above has been largely set up. For example, that there are men's lib groups in nearly all the high schools and colleges, and that women know that they are not going to have a baby, so that they are inclined to vote against the fluffy feminazis and vote with the masculists to menfair the gender laws. Once MGTOWs see that women are converting themselves in large numbers to being female masculists, then it's likely that many former MGTOWs will convert themselves into becoming masculists and start pushing for the creation of the necessary masculist infrastructure, for example, helping create the men's lib groups at high schools and universities, approaching the broadcast media to get journalists to write and film pieces about masculist/MGTOW ideas, which is in fact the biggest story around, because if things continue the way they are, then whole populations will get wiped out. There's no bigger story than that, so it has to be addressed. MGTOWs will be able to throw off the female bloc vote argument once they become convinced that large numbers of women are becoming female masculists, who are motivated to block vote with men to menfair the gender laws. MGTOWs will then convert themselves into angry, politically active masculists and get politically active, setting up men's lib groups, pushing the journalists to increase publicity for MGTOW/masculist ideas, haranguing the feminazis to stop their awful misandry by blowing them away with superior male intelligence and far greater verbal venom, since men have higher testosterone levels. Anything men choose to do, they can do better than women, due to the general phenomenon of GMV, greater male variance. Men's performance scores on virtually anything are more spread out over a whole population than women's scores, so the top scorers are always men. Many MGTOWs will be able to see that the traditional approach of the MGTOW in just quietly, passively, apolitically walking away from marriage and paternity is the slow way to liberate men. By pushing women to become female masculists and joining forces with the male bloc vote, the gender politicians will be forced to change their gender preference and become menfair by reforming the gender laws to be ethical towards men. In summary, MGTOWs need to be made conscious that the traditional female bloc vote argument that is traditionally used to reject MGTOW political action, to reject MGTOW gender politics, is refutable by simply pushing large numbers of women to become female masculists, by forcing them to, by threat of them not having babies due to MGTOW paternity rejection. In other words, the MGTOWs now have a clear path, a strategy, to convert themselves into masculists, so that men's lib can be achieved a lot faster, by forcing the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws, because if they don't, they'll be voted out by the majority male-female masculist bloc vote. Whole new doors open for MGTOWs now. MGTOWs can become politically active, encourage that their efforts will not be in vain and wasted. A way forward is now clear. It can be expressed in the form of a masculist slogan, quote, "To convert MGTOWs into masculists, convert women into female masculists," end quote. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and Hugo de GARIS. Ciao.